threshold or the limit of what the concentration should be to be considered safe for swimming. So any concentration that is above that red line does not meet the water quality objective. So all sites except for San Vicente Creek are well above the recommended range, meaning that if people swam during the first flush, there was a good chance they could get sick. The orange line at the top of the graph represents the upper limit of detection. So those sites that reach that upper limit have even more E. coli that can be detected in that 1 to 10 dilution. So we also asked the lab to measure E. coli in the 1 to 100 dilution. The 1 to 100 dilution gives us a better picture of where these sites are in comparison to each other. So you can see Surfer South has the highest concentration of E. coli at around 141,000 mpn per 100 milliliters. During this year's first flush, San Vicente Creek was within recommended ranges for E. coli concentrations at about 100 mpn per 100 milliliters. So it's not zero, even though San Vicente Creek might look like it on this graph. It's just because the y-axis is so large. There's a lot of community interest about San Vicente Creek. So this is a promising piece of information that E. coli levels did not exceed the pollution threshold this year. We hope that this trend will continue. San Vicente Creek did exceed pollution thresholds for Enterococcus concentrations, but it is valuable that this site did not exceed the pollution threshold for E. coli, since it has historically been very high in E. coli levels. And the watershed is also part of a water quality improvement plan to try and address bacterial concentrations. So while this is good news, we're going to keep an eye on the E. coli levels. We also look at historical data for many of our sites. This graph shows the lead concentrations over time. The y-axis shows the lead concentration and the x-axis shows the year. And each site is indicated by a different color line. And that red dashed line is that water quality objective or that pollution threshold. So take a look at that yellow line. This represents Vassar drainage. You can see pictured on the top left. Vassar drainage is located in Pillar Point Harbor, and we noticed that lead concentrations at Vassar drainage had increased in 2019 and in 2020. So we wanted to keep an eye on lead concentrations at this site to see if they were going to continue to increase in 2021. This year, lead concentrations at Vassar were within recommended ranges and did not exceed the pollution threshold. So we do not see a problem with lead concentrations at this site, but we're going to continue to keep an eye on it. Also want to show y'all the historical graph for copper. Again, the y-axis represents the copper concentrations, while the x-axis shows the year. And take a look at that green line. That represents San Vicente Creek mouth, also pictured on the left. This year, San Vicente had elevated levels of copper, more than any other site. We have not seen this at San Vicente, so this is something that we'll be keeping our eye on for next year. Here's another snapshot summary of some of the water quality results this year. Surfer South had the highest concentrations of E. coli and Enterococcus. West Point Avenue had the highest concentrations of orthophosphates. San Vicente had the highest concentrations of copper. So now that we've discussed the first flush results, let's talk about what we can do to improve water quality and the health of our ecosystems. The RCD offers programs that improve water quality and promote water conservation and resiliency, from harvesting roof rainwater in greenhouses and residences with rain barrels to installing stormwater gardens, water bars, and permeable pavement. The RCD works wherever it is needed to accomplish water quality improvements and conservation. If you're interested in learning more about any of these techniques, this stormwater booklet goes into more detail and is very useful in assisting landowners in greening stormwater runoff. It is available on our website and free to use, so we can send it to you if you are interested. It contains information for homeowners in greening their home to slow, spread, and sink stormwater runoff. The San Mateo Resource Conservation District is happy to offer any technical assistance and support if anyone is interested in implementing these types of projects. So thank you for your time. Myself and Noah, the Water Quality Program Manager, is here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nicole. That's always fascinating. This is also an informational item. So anybody in either the public or the council that wants to ask or comment on this for 3 minutes, welcome to put your hand up. And Greg, I see you have your hand up.
Can we get a link to that booklet she refers to? I don't understand what a water bar is, but I would love to look at the booklet.
Sure, Greg. I just pasted it in just as you were asking. Beat you to the punch. Thanks.
Some really interesting information in there.
Thank you. Sid.
Hi, I noticed on the picture at Vassar, it looked like the pipe was cracked. I think that's by the yacht club in Princeton, right? The Vassar Avenue slide that you showed. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is, thank goodness the San Vicente Creek is going down, because I know the Marine Reserve was one of the most polluted beaches in all of California, like 2 years ago, I think. So that's good. But do they do anything? I mean, does anyone know where that pipe at Vassar is coming from? Is it just supposed to be street water runoff?
Yeah, it's basically just street water runoff from further up Vassar. And
did it look like?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Did it look like it had a crack in it?
I think it's fairly old. I noticed last year that it actually was filled with sand, so I was curious if it would actually discharge, but it seems to be flowing well and doesn't seem to be a lot of water kind of coming from anywhere else. So I think it's still working, but
Since
it might be time.
We did our collection in the dark, I didn't really notice that, but thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Hi, thanks for this presentation. I just wanted to ask about the copper at San Vicente Creek, since that's the first time we've seen that. Do you have any idea where that could be coming from? What causes copper in the runoff?
I can do this one, Nicole. Nicole went into it a little bit in the heavy metal slides. Copper can come from brake pads, come from any kind of old metal stuff hanging around, or could come from some roofing materials. It does seem like it might just be a one-off down at San Vicente, so we're definitely going to keep an eye on it. We go down there between 10 and 15 times a year along San Vicente Creek, and I haven't seen anything this year that would indicate a kind of red flag for copper. So could have been anywhere in the watershed, I think, basically where some copper got into the creek.
Do you test for copper on a regular basis, or just during first flush?
Just during first flush. We test for fecal indicator bacteria the rest of the time, and then we do some kind of recon days to go out there and just see what's going on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I live right by there, and I haven't seen anything in the creek that could indicate that. So maybe it's something further up, or hopefully just a one-off. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the coliform bacteria at Surfers Beach. There's constant talk about upgrading restrooms there. Do you think there's any connection, or is that coming from further upstream?
One of the tests that we do, in addition to those kind of standard bacteria tests for E. coli and Enterococcus and all that, is we do what's called microbial source tracking, where we have the lab actually do like a DNA analysis of the sample, and they can tell us if there's human associated bacteria in there, or a dog, or whatever, basically whatever we want them to look for. And we have really not done very much of that at Surfers Beach. We've done it in San Vicente Creek, up in San Pedro. We've done it at Pillar Point Harbor, but not a ton there. So difficult for me to say if that's coming from humans or dogs or wildlife, or what it's coming from. But I know that there is, stormwater runoff from Granada and around that area, and off of Highway 1 there as well. So it's we just don't know where that's coming from.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you very much. This is always interesting, and I appreciate your coming, filling us in on it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a proclamation for National Poetry Month. And I'll turn that over to Dave Olson.
Yeah, this is maybe the first time we've ever actually issued a proclamation. I did a quick search. I didn't see any others. So we received an email from the San Mateo County Poet Laureate, Eileen, Casanetto, who has joined us tonight. I'd asked if she wanted to speak, but I haven't heard back from her yet. So I thought, you know, we've been going through a lot of stuff with COVID. National Poetry Month seemed like a good thing to issue a proclamation on. And I see that she's on now. So, you know, poetry is a way for people to express and share their feelings, their concerns, and certainly something that we have needed a lot of over the last couple of years. Do you want to say something on it?
Sure. Thank you, Dave. Good evening, honorable members of the Midcoast Community Council. I'm very honored to be here and to accept your proclamation of April as National Poetry Month. As a matter, I'm the third Poet Laureate of San Mateo County. The first Poet Laureate is Caroline Goodwin, who comes from, I believe, El Granada. And the Coast Side community is really very special to me. My husband and I try to go many times a year. I know a lot of poets from that area. And all I can say is that poetry is a great community builder, a great equalizer, and certainly one of our most democratic forms of expression. In fact, during the early days of the pandemic, people have turned to poetry as a survival mechanism and a way to heal and reimagine the future. I'm also hoping that the Midcoast community can support having a poet laureate in the area or a youth poet laureate to amplify the role of poetry in our shared humanity. Chair Tutan, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name. May I share a very short poem?
Please do.
Thank you. So this is just a very, very short poem. And it goes, I was taught to gather only what belonged to me, to never pick wildflowers, but instead commit to memory the shape and sound of what they shelter. Painted lady, bumblebee. When I say speak poetry, I mean know the language of wild and fragile things. Speak of flight and firelight. How to measure a wingspan, a lifespan, a split second that changes everything. Carry each other, the poet says. This matters more than anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So first thing I'm looking for is a motion to issue the proclamation.
We're not going to take comment?
We'll take comments too. I was just hoping for a motion first.
I'd like to move that we approve the proclamation.
I second it.
Okay.
Glenn, could you call the roll on that? Or do we, I guess we were discussing.
No, discussion. Greg, I think, wanted to say something.
Yes.
Well, going back a few hundred years on my father's side, two of my ancestors were poet laureates of Guatemala. So I support this proclamation, and I have this to say. Poetry skills you're trying to save, it won't be easy. Burma shave.
You don't want signs on the highway, Greg.
Probably too young to know what that is.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Shall we vote on the proclamation then? Len, could you call the roll?
Greg?
Aye.
Michelle?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Jill?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Lynn? Yes. Is Dan still not here? Passes 6-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next bit. We pulled the minutes for January 26th. I think who pulled them? Was it Len or Dave?
It was me.
Whoever pulled them, do you want to comment on why you pulled them?
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm bringing up my notes here. Sorry. Got through everything so fast. There we go. Okay, so there were some typos, I think, that I had sent to Len, and I don't know if he corrected them or not. I didn't see anything back. Council was undertaking these acts, for example. A couple of others. There was an error in my comments about the response for Jill's letter versus the one that I helped author. I'm very concerned that there's not a single comment from the community on the off-leash dog issue. And we had quite a bit of discussion, and that's, I think the last time we had a discussion about changing the way minutes were written, I think it was pretty clear the consensus of the council at that point was we wanted community comments to be in the agenda. Obviously, they have to be trimmed for length sometimes. There was an error with council activity and future agendas. We didn't get to those items, so they just been trimmed. So I have actual errors. Oh, and then there was an issue that the minutes had attempted to do a comparison of the two different letters that were proposed on the off-leash dog issue. And the comparison between the two letters did not seem correct to me, and I don't even understand why it's there. So I had a lot of issues with these minutes.
Before we go on, I'm looking at the agenda on the website, and I don't see minutes posted to the agenda. So this may be moot. We may not even need to be talking about this.
They were posted yesterday, earlier today.
Could somebody look at the website yourselves and
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I'm reading it now. It's there.
It is
Yeah,
there?
there.
Okay. All right. Okay, never mind then.
So yeah, let me speak for a moment, Claire.
Please.
So to finish these totally, I was constrained with time. So I did receive Dave's comments, but it did not have time to work on response. And so I will do that. There are 2 points he raised. I just want to get feedback, I guess, at the council level. Dave, if I understand correct, you're particularly concerned when I reported the public discussion after we had a presentation by Nicholas, and then we're looking at it. We had 24 speakers, and I did a quick summary. Were you looking for each speaker to have an identified comment for them?
Yeah, or at least if they were nearly identical comments, to at least say so-and-so had very similar comments. We should at least have names. We should at least have the speakers' names, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I guess what I was considering would be to have the names. I didn't think it was to the point to put those in. The other thing that Dave brought up, and I was trying to be specific and add clarity to it. So if you let me share my screen, Dave.
Oh, sure, hold on. You got it?
Okay, so I have here. So did you just enable live transcription? It just showed up here with that. Anyway. So I was concerned there was considerable confusion, both in terms of what was made available relative to the second letter and the process. So in looking at them, I felt the distinguishing feature was that both the letter that was originally proposed and the letter finally adopted after modification by Michelle shared a common progress about the program, showing a certain degree of what could be taken on both areas. And then they had a particularly different concluding phrase in each of the two paragraphs, which I highlighted. And I think that reflected very much the sentiment that was in the meeting. So I put this in, and those were projected on the screen. So I put those in to make that distinction clear, especially given the confusion that existed about the letters. It was a reflection of things that were presented at the meeting, and I think that was something that you had a problem with. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, to me, first of all, I'm not there for, and
broke up a
to me,
little bit
this skips over some other important differences in the letters. I will say that when I put the final letter up on the agenda posting, I left both the original letter and Jill's alternate letter so that people could see them. And at some point later on, some other council member removed those and left only the final letter. So I was a little bothered by that too, but that's a separate issue. But I do think people should be able to see the original letters if they want, but I don't think this is an adequate description of the differences between the letters.
Well, okay, I felt that with links to the two letters that this would be appropriate and give a certain sense of it there. So, but in terms of also, there aren't links to, direct links to the video to show that. So there are things like that that need to be completed. I will make an endeavor to add the 24 names, but did not plan to put in their comments at all. And then if you still feel that you're uncomfortable with this, I mean, leave it for vote, or we can talk about that further.
So you're proposing to bring this back for the next meeting?
That's correct. That's correct.
So we're pulling it for now.
Sir, the other one that was on the agenda to be there is our retreat. So I have a couple of comments to make about the retreat.
But wait a minute, before we leave this one, I think
sure.
Greg had some comment to make, and some other people might as well.
Yeah, please, Greg, go ahead.
I think Claire asked for a sense of the council on this. As far as the recording of the community comments goes, I'm comfortable with a summary, which Len has done here. It's okay to me to either put the names in or leave them off, but when you have a meeting that runs till midnight, I do not expect a verbatim or even close to verbatim subset of what everybody said. As far as Len's adding this stuff, I was very confused about the three letters, the initial one, Jill's revision, and the hybrid solution. And I find it a useful piece of historical summarization to have something like what Len has done here. I'm not saying, Dave, that I know this is completely accurate and that this is every difference, but I do think that it is a worthwhile endeavor to share this was the difference. And my last comment is, and my memory's a little fuzzy, but I've had several people complain to me that we did not allow community comment on either the amended letter or the hybrid letter. And I don't really know the protocol, but I recall we started off with letter A. We went to discussing the amendment, then Jill pulled it back so that we could have community comment on the first letter, but then we never got community comment on the other two. And that bothers me, and it bothers a bunch of other people. I don't know how.
We had substantial comment on both Jill's letter
on the amendment
and the amended letter as well.
Oh, no. Dave, you're talking about the letter that Michelle finished and then we went pretty quickly to a vote?
Yes.
I would have to agree we did not necessarily do that adequately.
We certainly had some comment on it, both from the council and the public.
I will, when I bring this forward, I'll review that part in particular, and if there was comment there, at least document it in terms of who participated.
That would be helpful, Lynn.
Okay.
Michelle?
Yeah, just to comment on the council, the comparison of the two letters. I don't really think that's appropriate for the minutes because I think it's a little bit subject to interpretation. I, however, do feel that both letters should be preserved in the blog post about the meetings so that we can see both the original two letters and then the final comment letter. And just one note, I think a mistake that we made when we posted the draft letters on the website is that we didn't actually have the watermark that says draft on them. And it's something that we should really be sure to do each time that we post a draft letter on the website, make sure it has draft as a watermark on the document.
Yeah.
And in addition on the minutes when they're posted.
Yeah.
And that's a whole policy discussion, and I had wanted to have a policy discussion, including issues like that. Not on this item, but as an agenda item.
What did you say there, Dave?
I said there's a number of council policy issues that I want to have an agenda item on sometime in the future, not tonight.
Yeah. Well, I think the minutes for the retreat will point us in that direction.
Are we finished talking about this for now? You're going to bring it back for the next meeting, correct, Glenn?
Yeah, I will check both with Michelle and Dave on the comments here.
Before we do that, so we don't have to have another discussion about styles and minutes and then next meeting. Could you at least say yes or no for those who haven't?
I'm sorry, what did you broke up a bit, Dave?
Your internet's really bad tonight, Dave.
I have no idea what's going on. Is everybody who has not spoken comfortable with the style of the minutes? Could you say so, yes or no?
I'm okay with it. And overall, there might be small things I would change, but the overall thing is not bad. Anybody else?
I'm okay with it.
So I'll check back with Dave and Michelle on this point.
Michelle's got her hand up. I don't know if you want to put it.
Oh, sorry, it was left up from before. I'll put it down.
Okay. Are we okay with moving on to the retreat minutes, which I guess are not posted, are they?
No, they're not posted. The retreat minutes, ran out of time.
So I'm not sure we should be discussing.
No, I'm just an information note to the council.
Okay.
Basically, to work that out, especially when we get to the priorities section, we shortcut that. And so in developing the minutes for that, I'm going to be working with Greg, which may be really a process, because really what happened in the whole priorities discussion is that it didn't come to completion. And it's a question that the retreat is in a little bit different category in terms of where you're trying to get to. So in bringing those forward, I wanted to work some with him to bring that forward. The point was made, and I think, I know I was in the first council where that structure came up, helped put it together, and both in terms of its organization and groupings, and it was much more like the groupings Michelle had indicated, but from a process standpoint and how it fits in, we really didn't sort of finish the discussion, even the items that were there. So I'd like to see us work that up in the interim, and that probably would come under the heading of Greg working on what he's already posted and taking in comments. But especially for the retreat, both of those documents are sort of living, working documents that need to come to a conclusion, not necessarily a formal vote. So there's some work on that.
As a process point, Claire, I received suggestions from several people on those two documents. And I made modest changes at their request of some of the people. But I didn't feel I should make major changes without a group discussion. So that was why I stopped where I did.
Do you feel that it warrants bringing it back as an agenda item?
I thought so.
Okay.
Dave, what do you think?
Well, I think we should do work prior to bringing it back, but that would be part of bringing it back to the council, going along with the minutes themselves.
In the past, my understanding about the minutes from the retreat is that they don't need to be detailed, that they can refer to these documents that we produce. They don't have to say them again.
Yeah, that's been, the retreat minutes have typically been very sparse and try to capture only important points of discussion. And as far as bringing the work priorities and the tasks documents that Greg did at the retreat and then finished later, I don't see a reason to bring those back to the council. Those are living. So issues arising from it absolutely might be an agenda item, but not those documents themselves, in my opinion.
Can we have a disagreement on that? So
Sure.
I'm not sure that
historically we've not ever brought those back.
Well,
there was some big change.
Claire, as chair,
if somebody has a problem with them, that's a different issue, but not a discussion.
What do you view as the process, Chair, for amending those documents as living documents?
Well, what did you just say? I didn't quite get that. What did you repeat it?
As chair, what do you view as the proper process for amending those living documents?
You know, we haven't actually worked that out in fine detail. My assumption was that the people who are responsible for each of these tasks and priorities would update them as they came to the council. For example, if there's an interest in the airport issues, they would be updated at least if it became an agenda item at an MCC meeting. Any action that was taken at that time would be documented on there.
I found in reviewing the minutes that we really didn't go to completion on all the items there. Lisa gave a comment on the original program that was there because they really dropped off for the last 2 years. So I believe it deserves some structural considerations too.
I think if we have this posted in a visible space on the website, that'll give us good direction that we haven't had for the last few years. They've been essentially invisible recently. And if we have them visible, then as things come up, we can discuss them. I don't think we need to vote on them as long as
I want to point out that we are way off Brown Act territory in terms of talking about something that's not on an agenda. If there's that kind of interest, we should have an agenda item in the future. And we can talk about that under agenda items.
You're right. This is talking about minutes that are not even in evidence. So we should probably close this item out, and we can discuss later about whether we want to agendize it.
Okay.
Okay.
Glenn, can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh, sure. Just on the consent agenda item, I wasn't clear in speaking to it. We didn't mention the item C, which the resolution to continue virtual meetings.
We did that last meeting.
Okay, but it was on the agenda this time. No, we did not. This was the first meeting of the month. We didn't do it.
It has to be done every 30 days.
Yeah.
Were we supposed to do that today then?
Well, it was on the agenda.
When did we last do it?
We approved the consent agenda except for the items that were pulled. The fact that we didn't read off every item on it is okay. They don't read every item at the Board of Supervisors or other meetings.
I was going to comment on this earlier. We don't have that resolution posted under tonight's list of documents. So we really should. And
it doesn't need to be posted on the website. It's the same exact document.
Well,
It's on the agenda.
Is it on the agenda?
I had numbered it when I was chair. I was numbering each resolution that we approved as a different number based on the month and date and posting it each time. So if we're going to be adopting a resolution, it would be nice to be more detailed about what resolution we're adopting.
So it turns out you don't have to change the number or anything else. You can just keep re-implementing the one. That's the way some of the county boards have started doing it. And I suggested doing that to Claire. And that's why it's on consent. And that's why it's not renumbered.
My only question here was we went through consent and adopted it. And since C was explicitly on the agenda, whether I should just note it as we passed it.
We'll ask our parliamentarian.
It should just simply, minutes should say the consent agenda, with the exception of the 2 items that were pulled, was approved.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on to council activity. Does anyone have something they want to report on? Greg?
Go ahead, Greg.
So I spoke at the Regional Water Quality Control Board this morning. I'm a little unclear on the Brown Act issues here, so I don't believe I'm supposed to go into detail on the issues, but if we have a future sewer issue, I think you'll see there's a lot to discuss there. I've also been working with a group of residents and people from the Cabrillo Unified School District on drafting a letter to the Department of Public Works to try and get, in Montera at least, some signage on unsigned intersections. And that's, I think, the extent I'm supposed to talk right now.
Thank you, Greg. Len?
Yes, they had the monthly Fire Safe San Mateo County meeting today. They had 2 really excellent presentations. One was on the fairly deep analysis, both of the Paradise Fire and the recent one in Colorado, with lots of good information as it applies to home hardening, etc. The second one was on basically the restoration revegetation work that's being done in Huddart and Wunderlich, as well as other county parks by RCD, and there's a lot of good information in that. I've had a continuing conversation with the Fire Safe Council about bringing both the meeting videos of the presentations as well as the slides themselves to be available to us. And in communication with Denise today, she said that they're working on it. And basically, I would really like to see them available to our community by the beginning of March, so that when we receive more detailed report information from our study, that it's available. It's just really good backup information. So I'm hoping they'll have it ready by that time. And if not, that we'll find a way to make it available here. I also noted that the listening session is not yet available on the RCD site. So maybe, Michelle, you could check with them on that.
It is posted on our website under the wildfire topic.
Oh, it's on ours, so I thought they were going to do this. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Any other council activity? What about upcoming agendas? We have 2 things on the agenda for the next meeting. One is a presentation by the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, and the other is an item on what Greg was mentioning about street signage in Montera. But
I have an item too.
Okay.
I'll be bringing back Connected Coastside for another short letter on it. One has to do with an explicit statement relative to recommending its adoption and to continue a little bit further with what comes next in that area. So I'll have that as a letter. And
okay,
I would expect to work with both Greg and Dave on that, who worked with me on the original one.
Okay, if you could contact me about
I'd
that.
rather not be part of that.
Sure enough.
Is that it, Lynn? We've got a couple of agenda items. They don't need to be on February 23rd, but one is a very fast item to approve up to $200 for 5 years of storage to back up the website. And we need that because it exceeds $50. And the other is a much longer item, which is talk about some of the policies that we didn't get to in the retreat. So I can clarify the details on the kind of policies I'm talking about later, but I would expect that to be 45 minutes to an hour long item.
Okay. And I know we've got things that are floating around that we will eventually get to, like the airport and that kind of thing. Anybody that wants to talk with me about anything, please reach out to me. Michelle?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was really glad to hear Supervisor Horsley say tonight that if we put something together, he would consider commissioning a study for lead exposure in children. So I'd like to move on that rather quickly. I know we also want to have a larger presentation on, having people from the airport come and speak, but I'd like to put together a letter for one of the next couple of meetings asking for the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors to do a lead study.
Okay. Idea. There's a lot from Reed Hillview to draw on.
Huh?
You can draw on a lot of the material that was presented for the Reed Hillview changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Claire, I support what Michelle's saying. I agree it's in advance of an agenda discussion, but it takes us so long to get around to having the meetings and doing it. I'd like to see a draft letter adopted as soon as is reasonable.
Yeah, well, I'll be meeting and putting together what's actually going to be on the agenda for next week or whenever we're meeting again this Friday, because I'm going to be out of town for a little bit. So the only two things that are absolutely definite are the two that I already mentioned. But Michelle, that sounds like it might actually fit.
Yeah, I could put something together. I'd like to work with Greg and one other person if anyone else is interested.
We should also consider whether we want to try Tim Fox's idea of voting on the issues and then having a letter written afterwards.
Yeah.
You can consider that as you put your agenda item together.
Yeah. I was looking at an item when we did a major comment on a LAFCO sphere of influence back in 2008, and at that time the board used that type of process for their letter.
And did it go well?
It did. It was very good. Good quality letter.
Good. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Taking a roll. Greg.
Aye.
Michelle.
Yes.
Dave.
Yeah.
Jill.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Dan's not here. Passes 6-0.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Ron.
Bye.
Night.